Okay, going live. Hello. Can you see us and hear us well? Is it working? That's the stress of the beginning, right?
Small details, Corey.
Yeah,
Small
small
details.
details, but important. Okay, thanks, William. A few practical things before we start. So you can see on the right-hand side, you have a Q&A, you have a chat, so go for it. If you have any question, please ask them. You have the right to ask whatever you want. We'll have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe at the end to answer all of those questions. And I think Jack and I will be happy. I think we always like that kind of iteration with the audience, so go for it. Again, we'll be happy to do that. You will also receive the replay at the end. So I think by the end of the week, you should have those replays in your mailbox. So if you just want to listen, you don't want to take notes, you can. You will have all of that. And I think we can start. It's been 1 minute, so everybody should be able to connect now. Maybe a few words about us. Here it is. So can you see the slides actually? I think, yeah, it's working. So Jack, do you want to introduce yourself maybe to start?
Of course, yeah. Well, thanks, Corey, for having me and having Onclusive. I look after our global integrated and field marketing team at Onclusive. This is the third business I've worked at in what we call the media intelligence industry. So if I don't know my stuff by now, it's probably a bit too late. And yeah, thrilled to be here. Hopefully I can learn from you. Everyone here can learn from us, and we'll be on to a winner.
Thank you for that. And I'm pretty sure you're kind of an expert. So I think that's going to be amazing today. Actually, I'm pretty happy to share the stage with you today. So my name is Corey. My real first name is Corentin, but too French. So that's Corey Mirand. I'm head of international here. It's been about 12 years in the SEO industry. Before e-commerce, then switched to finance, more oriented. Like what I like is AI contents, basically building AI type of strategy with our clients. For people that does not know about SEMG, a few words. I don't want this to be too salesy, so I'm going to go fast on that part. So we are an AI-powered solution for content excellence. Basically, what do we do? We are a SaaS platform for people to create performing content strategies. We do three things with our clients: increasing traffic on average plus 40%, saving time on average. We divide by 2 the time you need to produce your content strategy. And we help to de-silo companies, because PR people, communication people, brand people, SEO people, they don't talk to each other, and that's not possible anymore. So we help to have a centralized and one place to do it all. And maybe a few words about Onclusive, and then we can start the actual session.
Yeah, well, I'll hurry up with this bit as well then, so we can get to the exciting stuff. So Onclusive we really position ourselves as a partner for success in the communications industry, whether that's PR, marketing, social, whatever it might be. We really support practitioners throughout their workday. So whether you wake up in the middle of the night with a breaking news alert from our media monitoring, or you need to distribute a press release, you want to monitor and listen to social to understand how that's being perceived, you then want to forward plan, dates in the diary, whatever it might be. We support using a mix of AI and people far more intelligent than me, PR, comms, and marketing practitioners.
Is that possible?
Well, we'll see. I guess we'll find out in about 45 minutes.
We'll see that in a minute, I think. Okay, so today we're going to talk about three things, mainly social, SEO, and AI, basically to drive growth. That's the point of today. So we'll talk about strategies, specifically with finance use cases. Let's get to it then. Jack, the introduction is for you.
Yeah, I think when Corey and I were talking, we really wanted to think about how the sort of the motion from paid, earned, shared, and owned all comes together. And to Corey's point, these teams are particularly disparate and disconnected, but it doesn't need to be that way. As marketers or communications practitioners, we are tasked with brand reputation, with search engine optimization, with trend tracking, with campaign delivery, lead generation, but all of these things are interconnected. So what we'll plan to do today, and we'll be completely honest, there haven't been like loads of run-throughs of this. This will be very, very organic. What we'll plan to do today is run through what we're terming the customer voice circle, how you really become an authoritative voice to your customers, how you understand your customers, and how you make impact across paid, earned, shared, and owned, with a particular emphasis on earned, shared, and owned. And we'll run through that graph that you see on the right. You're welcome to screenshot it, and we'll go into some detail. And I think we start with listening. And this is all about taking a multi-channel approach to understanding your audience. And this is where Corey and I can sort of go back and forth on which channels are more important. So Corey, I'll let you pick off.
Yeah, thank you for that. And before we go in depth on the different channels, etc., I think one thing that you said is very important. We do all of that to get impact. We don't care about ego KPIs. Like, that's not the thing that matters. I work in the SEO industry for, as I said, more than 10 years, and I've seen so many SEO experts or digital marketing people saying, okay, I'm the #1 ranked on this keyword. We don't care. It's all about creating engagement, conversion, and all of that. So that virtual circle that Jack mentioned, listen, interpret, validate, and monitor, is all about, okay, how can I have the best impact possible for my audience and for my business interest also. But before that, one reminder that I think is really, really useful to have in mind, because we are talking about many, many things. It's a world that is very complex. So we need to have figures in mind to take good decisions. So the first one is Google is still the leader by far. We can see here on the left-hand side the number of visits per month on the biggest website in the world. So we have Google leading the chart by far, doubling YouTube's traffic basically, and we can see all the rest. We can see that we have ChatGPT within the top 10 for the first time ever in February. And we can also see the difference when it comes to search engines. That's the chart on the right-hand side. So when it comes to the search engine, we can see that ChatGPT is above Bing. Too bad. Yet Google is still the leader by, it's not even by far. There is not even a battle on that part. It's 31%, like not even percent. I'm not even trying to talk about that. Like, they are by far the leader. So if you need to have one search engine in mind, it still is Google first. Yet, and that's something that is very important, because we need to anticipate it's moving fast, and it's moving faster than ever. And it's an evolving world. So here we can see the number of users on ChatGPT's website. We can see here that they multiplied by 8 the traffic they have on the website. So of course, we need to take that into account. And we will talk about AI search, because that's important. There is a lot of trends that we need to take into account, of course, on search engines, but also on social media. And that's for you.
Yeah, and on that point of sort of Gen AI, we know that places like ChatGPT, like Perplexity, they look at trusted sources to provide their information. And one of the places that's growing in that regard is the news, and particularly online news. Those high authority domains, well regarded by crawlers. That hasn't changed, and that's particularly well regarded when it comes to generative AI. Okay, so then where is the news? Where is it originating, and where is it disseminated? And I'm looking at this particularly through the lens of social, and the sort of the crossover between social and earned media. We know that online news has overtaken TV for the first time. We all used to think that, you know, the most popular way of consuming news and the most authoritative way was broadcast. That's no longer the case. It's now online. And then when we go online to look for our news, it's social first. We discover that news through social first, whether that's Sky News, CNN, Fox, whatever it might be. None of us, you know, quite literally almost none of us are typing CNN.com and doing that, you know, that's direct discovery.
Maybe my grandpa is doing that.
Well, exactly. It's referral, and it's referral from social. You can see here, right?
Yeah.
TikTok now reaches 11% of adults, and 90 million Americans listen to podcasts weekly. That drives not only sort of direct or referral traffic, but also consumer behavior and what influences us. And that's really where that connection between news, social, and search all comes together. And that's why, from my perspective, social is no longer just a
And
marketing
if I
thing.
may add one thing that is, I think, quite cool is if it's not only a social media thing, but a digital marketing thing, and even more a marketing thing, we can have practices that are not within silos. Meaning, like you have a podcast, it's good. What you're saying in the podcast is interesting for your audience. Why, why not? You could have like articles, you could have social media posts, you could have landing pages, ads using what you had in that podcast at first. So it's cheaper, and you have one investment, the podcast at first, yet you have the return investment on maybe 4, 5, 6 different channels. So it's
100%.
really the way you should think about how to use those different channels.
Yeah, I talk with my team. So my team is a team of regional marketers, and for those of you who are familiar with field marketing functions, you'll know that it's really a split between regional marketing efforts and taking what's given to you globally and distributing it. And I often use the phrase, like, I want you to sweat it. I want you to drain it for everything that it's got. And that's not just distribution, but that's repurposing, whether that's working with Veed, the video platform, who I saw yesterday had done an update where it not only subtitles in real time, but it dubs in whatever language you select. Whether that is through sort of blogs, white paper content, ungated content, case study, whatever it might be, that's super important. So I completely agree. We were looking there at the lens of news and social. But that's before you think about all of the other channels. Just looking here at these platforms, there are over 14 billion accounts or whatever else knocking about on these platforms. And we've referenced already the rise of Reddit, which I think is sort of not rated enough, I would say, and I'm sure Corey would agree.
From an industry standpoint, it's been like the last years were amazing for Reddit.
Yeah, and we see it as well from a social listening perspective. So it's good to see that crossover. But these platforms, that's before you even think about earned media, which is my soft spot, but also first party data, what's sitting in your HubSpot or your Salesforce or your whatever else, your client surveys, for example, and your third party data. What does Trustpilot say? What do other review sites or other sort of listicle articles, for example, say? And all of that comes together to make a lot of important data, but also an awful lot of noise. And really, I think one of the things we'll try and get to today is about cutting through the noise and about prioritization as well.
Yeah, sure.
So moving now from sort of generic terms to what you guys are all here for, which is thinking specifically about finance. All of those channels have different audiences, with different needs, different influence, different topics that matter to them, and so on and so forth. So firstly, you've got to go to where your consumers hang out to understand them, whether that's search, social media, wherever else. You have to not only be monitoring, but really deep listening. And that's something that we did recently at All-Inclusive with our banking report. There'll be a QR code at the end to download that. And you can see here some of the topics that are coming out, which I'm sure we'll dive into later. Some of them may be more surprising than others to you. I don't know. I don't work in the banking industry. But I think we typically think about things like that are top of mind at the moment, like ED&I, for example, or sustainability. Actually, those topics, unfortunately, from my perspective, don't feature in here as much as we'd like. And there are really some core issues like blockchain, like AI, like crypto, like mobile banking, these are the things that people really do want to be hearing about and resonating in from a content perspective, and that you need to show up for, whether that's through your organic social, whether that's through your paid, and ultimately through your SEO, where you're competing with your competitors. So I guess the takeaways there from me are around sort of listening to the whole piece, going to where your consumers hang out, and trying to understand what they're saying. And I don't know, Corey, if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that chart on the right hand side is so interesting, because it's basically what your audience is expecting if you're in the bank industry. And then sometimes you as a business, you are all about that. Like, for example, you are Coinbase, of course, you talk about blockchain, you talk about crypto, etc. For sure. Yet sometimes you're a traditional bank and you don't do anything with blockchain or with crypto or with AI. Yet you need to find an angle on which you can be relevant on the topic, saying, for example, what's the difference between traditional banking and crypto credit card, and put in like forward what's the advantage that you have, you as a business. But you need to talk about that, because that's the expectation from your audience. If you do not talk about it, you do not interest your audience, basically. When it comes to creating interest for your audience, we don't care about what you want to do as a business. We care about what your audience wants. And then, of course, we need to find the right match between your audience needs and what you do and what you sell as a business. But it's both, and at the exact same level. It's not only what you want to do. If you try to push something, it's your brand. It's not creating interest in your audience. And you need to have those in mind to then identify where are those match between what you sell and what's of interest for your audience.
I completely agree with that. And something that sprung to mind for me there is this idea we're hearing a lot about of authenticity as well. As part of that customer journey, you want to make sure that you're telling that same story, no matter where they are, what channel, what market, whatever it might be.
Yeah, we're going to talk about brand voice later, so that's all.
Okay, all right. We'll skip ahead. We'll skip ahead. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Corey. Completely agree. Well, if we move ahead, then the next part of that sort of customer voice circle we were talking about is the interpretation piece. It's all very well and good monitoring or doing the analysis, getting into Onclusive's platforms or into working with Semji or whatever else it might be. But if you're then not trying to interpret the data in order to take action, what an utter waste of everyone's time. And that's what we'll look at now. So there are a few ways that we can sort of cut through the noise from a social perspective. You guys working in the sort of BFI sector, there is a lot of noise. You don't necessarily want to see every mention or every piece of content related to you, but you want to understand the things that matter. You want to understand the things that are urgent, the things that have impact. And you can see some examples here from some analysis that we've done. So we can see an example with JP Morgan, who received lots of praise actually for his stances on Donald Trump's policies. There's some stuff as well around TikTokers exploiting a glitch in JP Morgan's online bank. These are the things that you only know about if you're listening to the conversation. Completely different use cases. CEO of JP Morgan now looks very good. If you're a PR team, you want to take that to him and prove the value of what you're doing in terms of the comments you're putting out. On the flip side, people are exploiting your software. They're probably not going to email you about it. They're probably not going to proactively pick up the phone and tell you, but they might write about it on Reddit. They might post on X. They might do a TikTok explainer on it. They might write something on their blog. You've got to be there to understand it. And the peak detection really is identifying, okay, there's always a level of noise for something like a bank, but are there particular areas that we're interested in where we want to know as soon as that takes off? Or are we just looking at overall volume? And when something really takes off, do we just want to be alerted and dig into it ourselves with our own expertise? I hope that makes sense before we move on.
It does, yeah. It's interesting.
So going back to this report, which is super recent, actually, I think it's about 6 weeks old, so we're all up to date. I just thought I'd pull in some examples. There's not a huge amount of commentary for me to add here. I think the data does the talking, and it's just something that you can take with you. So if you've learned nothing from
Screenshot,
today,
guys. Screenshot.
yeah,
Right
exactly.
behind.
Yeah, screenshot. I'll pose now so that I don't look awful in the screenshot. But you can see here some of the most popular banking products and services discussed on social on the left. A huge amount of it actually around culture and lifestyle, rewards, perks, etc., etc. A lot of it around financial decision making, mortgages, loans, etc., and less about the stuff we'd expect day to day, actually, like mobile banking, overdrafts, ISAs, online banking, cashback, all that sort of stuff is actually less popular. The things that are important to people are those more major decisions and those more sexy decisions like airport lounges, restaurant vouchers, etc., etc.
Yeah. The way I see things here, and I think it's pretty complementary, because what we have on the left hand side, it's basically the topic that we need to talk about, to write about, to be visible, either on our own website or on social media, etc. People care about credit cards, they care about rewards, they care about savings. Quite classic. Yet it's always good to know, and we can also have an analysis with search volumes, of course. And then on the right hand side, we have the CTA. What I said as an introduction was we don't care about rankings. Yet, of course, we need to get visibility. We need to get rankings to get traffic. Then we need to convert that traffic, those visits into conversion, because, of course, at the end of the day, what matters is dollars on our bank account, revenues. And here we can see that contact a bank advisor is by far the thing that people are looking after. So if you have a landing page and your CTA is contact us, maybe you're making a mistake, because people are looking for advisors, real people, or advice, and maybe you have an AI behind that. But at the end, what matters is people need to have a connection with a bank advisor. So here on the left-hand side, get traffic. Okay, you need to talk about that, and then you need to engage, and that's the CTA that you can use. Of course, it needs to be relevant. If you will never talk about fraud on something like create a bank account and then you have a CTA about fraud, nonsense. Yet, if you have a help center, for example, here, like you can say, I had a fraud, something like that, or I want to download a mobile banking app because that's online banking as a page, whatever, it needs to make sense. Yet those are the CTA that you should go for at first.
And Corey, does this tell us anything about sort of content strategy as well from an SEO perspective, or not really?
Yes, of course. What we have on the left-hand side is basically, so we work with finance companies, so big insurance companies, banking companies in the US, in Canada, in Europe, like big ones. Among the top 10, I don't have the right to quote them, but big ones we can see across the street. And those are all the time the biggest topics. They are all about, okay, open a bank account. I want to be the first. Insurance, everything related to savings, etc. Mortgage, for sure. Debit card, cashback, IRAs, all about pension, all of that. Those are the big one, and that's exactly what we have in here. So that's what I said. Okay, search volume and those are quite similar. Of course, we can go in depth with search volume because we can see specific things, specific keywords, but that's basically the same idea.
And I think that leads quite nicely then to the next section that I think you'll be taking us on about validation.
So we talked about listening. Of course, we need to understand our audience. We talked about interpretation, and then we need to validate. We need to triple check that everything is going to be like that. We are not making any mistake before we take actions. One way to do that. So there are a lot of ways to do that, but the first one is, and maybe the easiest one, is to validate the search for weak signals. Many tools can do that for you. Of course, Google Trends, exploring topic, trend watching, whatever. I have no stocks out there, so you can do whatever you want. I don't care. Google Trend can be a bit hard to use sometimes, so exploring topics is quite nice, I would say. And again, I have no stocks. But here is an example. So let's say you are a finance company. Yeah, of course, that's an example. Of course, you are a bank, you're an investment bank, you're an insurance company. It will depend. But let's say finance overall. The two biggest things, trending topics at the moment, it was on Friday, I think, are debanking because of what happened last week, and crypto payroll. Those are, in terms of growth, the two biggest trends on the market. So if by any chance you as a company are relevant on the topic because you have expertise, because you have a product, or you can talk about it and it's relevant within a topic cluster that you have, within a landing page that you have, whatever, you can produce like relevance and like added value content for your audience. Go for it because it's massive. And you need to identify those with signals, not only because you need to validate what we had, those big things, those big topics that we mentioned before, but also because it will take time. Because it was, okay, you need to do this and that. Okay, but now we need to do things, actually do things. And so you will at first put things in the planning, then you will create the brief. So if you have an SEO team in-house, you will have those SEO people saying, okay, that's the question that you need to answer. Those are the keywords that you need to insert. Those are the links that you need to insert, etc. Or you're lucky and you use SAMG, or you want to be lucky and you want to use SAMG, go for a demo. That's the salesy part of it. Sorry. Then you need to produce. So Jack is like, what the hell is going on?
No, I love it. I'm a marketer. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Then you need to produce. That's going to take time. Of course, there is no magic out there. Then you need to review, integrate. Of course, if you're in a big company, you will have legal, you will have compliance, you will have product. That's going to take time. Sometimes it can take between 1 and 3 months. So it's massive. And then you will perform. And it's not going to perform day one. Never going to happen. On average, it's between 6 and 9 weeks. It can be a bit shorter if it's an existing content that you repurpose. It can be a bit longer if you're a small website. Of course, yet on average, between 6 and 9 weeks. So that whole process is going to take time. So you need to anticipate like all the time. That should be your number one priority. Anticipate. And why? Because you want to be there when it's still a blue ocean. When you don't have all the big guns, like all the big websites, the Wikipedia, Investopedia, the JP Morgan, all those big ones, because they don't have that capacity to go fast, yet when they will go for it, that's going to be hard to beat. So make sure that you're the first, and you will have the opportunity to be present and also to be visible in AI search. We said, okay, Google should be the number one go-to search engine, yet it's not the only one. It's not the only one anymore. It was the case a couple of years ago. It's not the case anymore. So you want to be visible on Perplexity, on Gemini, on Bing AI, and all the others. So if you're the first, you will be the number one source because you're the only source that he can use. So that's basically what you want to achieve. And
Corey,
yeah.
Sorry, Corey, before we move on, just to reiterate, it's the same from a PR or a marketing perspective, from a content perspective. If there's a journalist looking to write about a topic, it will be based on the number of people who are talking about it online a lot of the time. If you want to newsjack or find opportunities, one way of doing that is using tools like Onclusive Forward Planner to see what's happening. But another way is to say, what are people truly talking about? And that can be through things like Google Trends, or through something like Onclusive Social. But I completely agree with that from a marketer's perspective.
Yeah, it's not the topic of today, but SAMG is used within newsroom, like big newsrooms, creating breaking news, evergreen type of content by journalists, because it's useful, because you need to understand what the audience is expecting on a specific topic. Okay, you talk about inflation, or you need to talk about, mortgage rates. Maybe you need to understand what the topic, what's the intent behind it.
We had a great example of that, Corey, a couple of weeks ago. We have a tool internally. Well, it's available for sale if people want to buy it. But we have a tool called Forward Planner, which essentially includes all of the dates in the UK. We partner with AP in the US, so it's AP Planner, Associated Press Planner. Any date of any relevance, whether it's government, whether it's appreciation days, whatever it is. We managed to secure a high authority link back from a publication by being the first people to outreach to that journalist and offer a comment on a particular topic. It wasn't anything of any huge significance to us or importance to us, but we recognized that the objective on that wasn't necessarily to grow share of voice or whatever else it might have been. It was to demonstrate that backlink, and even just that brand reference within the publication, we know will help Google and other search engines view us with greater authority. So yeah, completely agree with that point around newsrooms.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good example. So just to go back to what we were saying, so we identified what we need to do and how to validate things and go as fast as possible to be the first, to make sure that we are the first website or the first company overall on the topic. And then we need to produce. So on that part, if there is one thing I need to say, if you want to be visible, go big or go home. If you try only to have one piece of article, one paragraph, one mention, one social post, never going to work. So if that's a topic that you identify as something important, because it's strategic, it's trendy, there is some volume for you, create what we call a topic cluster. So basically, a mapping of all the content that you can produce that are relevant to one another, on which you can have links. It can be between articles, but it can be between a social post and an article. It can be between a podcast to an article or to a guide or to an ebook. You create an ecosystem on the same topic for you to become the expert. That's basically the logic behind it. So to do that, you have many, many tools. Of course, I will just quote one, also as you have others, to create those kind of mappings. Here it's on the topic of debunking. At first I was like, okay, what can I say about debunking? It's on itself something quite niche. Yet there are so many questions, so many subtopics that I can write about or talk about, depending on the channel that I'm using. Here, so I can create my content planning. If you want to be a bit better than that and you want to basically go from that strategy to that mapping, and then you want to produce, that's basically what Samji offers to you. So here it's the same process, debunking and then subtopics. And in one click, you can go to production, because we talked about silos quite a lot at the beginning. Often we have an amazing strategy, amazing ideas, amazing things that needs to be done, but nothing is done. Why? Because those are different teams. If you work with the big companies, you know that by heart. It's different managers. Maybe those managers, they hate each other, so they don't talk. So you need to have one place for all of it to be centralized. And you need to produce, if I go at the end of the funnel, basically the production part, you need to produce aiming for performance. And for that to happen, you need first to be SEO optimized here, because I'm talking about organic search, but you need to be channel optimized, because if you go for a podcast, or if you go for a Nix post, or if you go for an Instagram post, there is rules that you need to respect, guidelines that you need to respect. So you need to follow those recommendations. That's the basics. Then you need to create interesting content. So that's the knowledge part of it. Because if I write about credit card, or if I write about loans, maybe I'm going to rank, because it's been a few years working in the SEO industry, and so I know what I'm doing. Yet the content on itself will be boring and I'm not going to finish my sentence because I don't want to be impolite, because I'm not an expert. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not I'm not an advisor. I never studied banking, so that's nonsense. So you need to put in that knowledge, your expertise as a company, or as a journalist, or as a copywriter, etc. And you need that piece of content to be unique. So that's what we have in here, the brand voice. And I'm going to take some time about that, because that's so important. We said, okay, we want to rank, but we also want to create engagement. And that's often comes from that part, the tone of voice, the brand voice. So you need to ask yourself a few questions. Is it formal, informal? What language elements am I using, etc., etc. So just to give you something that's I think is quite interesting is a few examples. Big brands that everybody knows about. For Chase, for example, the main guidelines are we are expert, we are trustworthy, we are innovative, we are customer-centric, we are embracing technology. And we can see that the homepage of Chase.com, we can see that two people, quite young, with an iPhone on the end, and we are talking about preparing for life's moments, budgeting, saving. So yeah, we care about people. We are all about innovation. You can trust Chase as a company, etc. For State Farm, it's quite different. They are all about the community, all about the support. They are authentic. You can see a grandpa with his grandchildren. We can see a community. We can see that they are talking about neighborhoods. It's an insurance company. Why the hell are they talking about neighbors? Because that's who they are as a brand, and that's important. Here, it's nothing related to SEO, but it's related to engagement. So you need to take that into account. But as you're a big company, you have maybe dozens, maybe hundreds of people working on your contents on different channels. Often it's hundreds of people for every channel. And how can you have that unicity of tone of voice across all channels? Good luck, that's hard. One thing that is quite good in our world is that we can use AI to help us with that. So just one example, again, we can't see everything, but one example for texts that you can publish on social, on your website, on whatever channel that you may use, but for text. If you're an OpenAI fan, you can use your GPT. So you need to have an OpenAI account, and you can upload your editorial guidelines. You can have a prompt. So you need a bit of skills when it comes to prompt engineering, but you can have a quite complex prompt and it can work. And you can save that GPT and then export it so you can share that with your team. That's possible. Of course, sometimes you will have your IT saying, nope, not going to happen. Not going to download our editorial guideline within a tool that can be shared through wherever. Or you can use solutions like enterprise kind of solution. And of course, that's the kind of thing that we can do at SAMG. So here you can create your brand voice. You don't need to be a prompt engineer because you can train your brand voice on existing content on which you consider are cool or cool enough to be relevant when it comes to your brand voice. It can be URLs, it can be files, it can be text, it can be whatever you want. And you can also add prompts. So if you have people that have those skills, you can use it to put in specific constraints. I don't want to talk about this specific topic, or I want to focus myself on, I don't know, the price, or I don't want to talk about the price, whatever. So you can go from identification to the production, like real one-click type of production to produce a paragraph, to produce a fully AI-generated content using those three pillars that we add right here, your SEO recommendation, that knowledge base, and the brand voice. So now we have amazing content pieces, and we need to show that we're the best, basically. So that's the monitoring part. Yet I think we're not that good, right, Jack?
You're absolutely right. So we've done all of this work. You've listened to Corey and me for some reason. You've done all of this hard work. But 7 in 10, 70% of marketers then don't go beyond surveys to measure success and satisfaction. Well, we all know that people only respond to surveys for one of two reasons. Either they're really pissed off or they want an Amazon voucher. So, that is not a successful measure of success. And this is where I would really encourage you, when it comes to measuring, I know that it can be overwhelming. None of us really got into marketing to derive impact. We got there to drive impact. I would encourage you to begin simply, but simply begin. And too many of us are just sort of counting stuff. And what that really does, in my opinion, is reduces us to this sort of tactical function. We count how many links we've got, or we sort of count how much coverage we've had, or, we look at a number when it comes to our average position for a keyword. Boring. And it doesn't, if you're owned by private equity, or if you have investors, or if you have a CFO who is listened to, which I'm pretty sure all businesses do, we know that marketing is often one of the first to be looked at when cost cuts are needed. And if you're giving them numbers that don't mean anything to them, that don't link to business objectives, I wouldn't mind betting my bottom dollar that marketing would be looked at quite heavily. And that's where I'd encourage you to move beyond thinking outputs, which is counting stuff, volume metrics. How many press releases have I put out? How much coverage? How many social posts? How much engagement? How many blogs, etc., to outtakes, What do people now think and feel as a result of the work that I've been doing? What's my relevance? What's the sentiment? What's the engagement? So on and so forth. And ultimately, if you want to be really smart, outcomes. How does this link back to business objectives? How has what we have done improved lead volume, revenue, retention, whatever that metric might be, but really moving throughout that sort of life cycle to something far more impactful is what I would recommend, Corey.
Yeah, and that makes a point to the next part is a few pro tips, and I think you're going to talk about social and how to measure social because it can be quite hard. Two things in here. First, always go multi-channel. And I'm an SEO person, so it's hard for me to say that, but if you want to create value, you should talk multi-channel all the time. Because when you create something, let's say a blog post or a landing page, it's not, and it's made for organic search at first, but maybe you will use it for SEA. Maybe people will just type it, CNN.com, something like that. Or maybe you will use it for social, or maybe people will put it on Reddit. We don't care. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is people coming to your website and clicking on that CTA or get a quote. That's what we want. So stop with those silos, please. The second thing is have some specific reports for things on which you worked on. Because often we work with reports that makes no sense because we look at everything at the same time with the same level, I would say. Things that have been done 3 years ago, things on which we can't do anything, even if it's dropping. There is so many technical constraints, we can't do anything about it. We don't care. So focus on things on which you can have an impact on. And so it can be, for example, when it comes to SEO, okay, you created, let's say, 100 pages. What's the impact of those 100 pages? Not on the overall website. Same, you created social posts on a specific topic. What's the impact of those social posts? Overall, we don't care. It's ego metrics. We don't want that. It's not return investment oriented. And if it's not return investment oriented, it's BS. So we don't want that. Okay. And one thing that I think is quite cool is when you go in depth, and in here you have an amazing example when it comes to social, is how to do things. Because I said, okay, multi-channel, but of course to analyze, then you need to go channel per channel.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. I've just included some really quick examples building upon what both of us have just said about the need for reporting, the need to move from outputs to outtakes to outcomes, and the need to do things in context as well. So one of the questions I often get asked is what metrics should I be looking at? And from my perspective, there are some things on here I could talk about this for hours, so I won't do that now. But look at things like awareness through several different lenses, not just site visits and engagement, but also where is that referral traffic coming from? What's the volume of earned media coverage? Then look at things in context. Okay, we're getting loads of volume and loads of mentions or loads of traffic. But when we look at that in context, how's our brand perceived? What's the sentiment around that? And if it's negative, that's obviously huge for cause panic. If it's positive, then let's have a look at why it's positive. What can we do more of? What can we learn? On that context point, looking at influencers, I'm sure lots of you have probably been asked, can we just get an influencer for this campaign? Or, in the same way that we're asked often just PR it, or, just do a campaign around something, we're now asked just influence it. Something I'm super keen for us all to do as an industry is moving beyond follower counts to look at influencers, but really understand relevance and authenticity within that audience. And that could be publications or it could be individuals. A super good example of this is during COVID, when we were all told to sort of stay at home, protect our health services, protect our family and our friends and our neighbors. A government, which will remain unnamed on which country, but a government, like, right, we really need to reinforce this message. What do we do? It's 2020. There's this new thing called influencers. We'll get some influencers involved. So they got people off of a reality TV show, load of models and people have been on a reality TV show to reinforce that message. The next thing that those people did is get on a plane to Dubai, drinking cocktails, partying on the beach, no sort of social distancing. So the authenticity of that message was irrelevant. A lot of money was wasted, and it didn't impact that objective that they were working towards. It drove a huge volume of conversations. Sentiment looked broadly positive, but when it came to the outcome, it didn't achieve what was needed. And finally, my sort of pro tip is, look at things in real time, because things move so quickly, particularly when it comes to that multi-channel approach. The best thing to do is to get ahead, as Corey was explaining earlier, with things like newsrooms, etc., and planning. But if you can't do that, listen in real time, rather than retrospectively, as that will give you so much more value.
Yeah. So cool. And then we wanted to talk a bit about notoriety as a brand, basically. It's of course about reporting, but it's also about using those data to make sure that we're going to have results, because it's a circle, as mentioned. And so we are finishing the circle to go back to identification and doing things, basically. So here, one thing is that notoriety as a brand, as a website, as a person, as an author, a copywriter, is so important, because otherwise you will get nothing. You will get no results. And it's been the case for so long. Here we have a quote from Rand Fishkin. I'm pretty sure you all know about Rand Fishkin. If you don't, go for it. It's kind of cool what he does. And that's a quote from 2014. So it's been a while. It's been 11 years. And that sentence is even more true today. Like, good SEO is a result of being remarkable on the web and not the opposite way. So you need to create value. And here we can see the Google leaks. Of course, if you're interested in the Google leak, we have a full webinar dedicated to that. It's quite complex. So I'm not going to take time today. But basically, there is some algorithmic criteria saying, okay, if a website is relevant on a topic, if a website as a strong brand, as strong copywriters, as a strong website on a topic, basically they are legitimate, we're going to put them forward. And it's going to be way easier. When you do something that is not perfect, yet you have a strong notoriety, it will be way easier for you to rank, and so to get results, and so to get revenue at the end of the day. So you need to build that. And here, one example that is, I think, quite interesting, because we all know about Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a website that is huge, and it's been decades. Yet, on the last 2 years, they are increasing, and not starting from nothing. Like, when you do plus 50%, and when you have like 200 million clicks, it's huge. So basically, and they do nothing more or nothing different, basically. Yet they have such a strong brand, such a strong trustworthiness, basically, that they benefit from it. And that's an issue, because if you start on the market and you produce like expert content, you're so relevant, you create value, you should be the first ranking. That's the promise of Google. Yet it's not like that. And Google knows about it. They are saying, that's the code that we have here, that they are working on it. Yet it's not like fixed yet. And so if you're big, benefit from it. If we have those big ones, the cavalry in here, if you're Chase, if you're State Farm, if you're Allstate, if you're the governments, if you're those websites, go for it, because right now you have an advantage. And maybe it's going to change at some point, because Google is saying that's going to change. And they are working hard. I had some conversation with some Google people saying, yeah, that's something that we want to change, because some big websites are doing things that are not interesting, and we are losing ground to those ChatGPT and Perplexity, etc. So we need to be the first, like the leading platform when it comes to relevant content. Nothing, and of course, in that fake news era, in all of those things that are happening in our world, Google is putting a lot of money on the table to increase and to improve on that part. So yeah, that's something important. And maybe as a first conclusion, we're going to have two conclusions for today. That's either one goal and one thing that you need to monitor. when you type your main business topic, here let's imagine it's life insurance, you need to monitor who's ranking and what's the related topics. So here it's definition, what is life insurance? Also related topics such as term life insurance, quotes, good news, it's transactional. But also Google says here that a related topic is a brand. State Farm is considered a related topic on the topic of life insurance. If I'm State Farm CMO, champagne, it's amazing. But if I'm Allstate, if I'm Geico, if I'm all those big guys, I have an issue and I need to work. Okay, so it's something that you need to monitor to see if you're here or if your competitors are here, but also something that you should aim for because that's amazing. That's really what we want to do. It's to increase that notoriety. It's basically Google algorithm saying, yeah, that's relevant on that topic. And second conclusion for you, 3 questions to ask yourself, Jack. Do you want to finish?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. These are 3 things that pose lots of other questions, as is always the way. But when Corey and I spent probably 10 minutes planning this, if we're being honest, these are the 3 that we sort of landed on, and it starts with almost where we just ended with Corey. Does my brand generate relevant online conversation? Exactly what you've just covered there, Corey. If there's anything you want to add on that one.
No, I think everything has been said.
As the expert speaker has already added. And on that point, that's not just in one place, but that's multi-channel. As Corey was mentioning earlier, Google searches, TikTok results, and including that brand query. The next is around brand reputation, and that's more contextual piece. Again, in a multi-channel way. We know that high authority domains are places like universities, places like news publications, places like Trustpilot and those review sites, Google reviews even more so. It's no surprise that Google has bias towards itself. And in particular on that side, from my perspective, Corey, it's that important to remember that earned media and particularly positive news drives search authority as well.
Yeah, it does. And one thing that we need to consider also is that we are going towards a world when third-party data is not going to exist at some point. And so we need to identify how we can work within a cookie-less world. And so if you have strong earned media, you're going to be the leader because you're going to be able to do your marketing, do your strategy without any third party. And the world will switch when we will come to that point. Everybody's talking about cookieless, but nobody's doing nothing about it. And so if you are strong on that part, you will have a huge advantage. So build it.
I'm scribbling down notes at the same time because I'm learning as well. I think for me as well, there are so many sort of applications or benefits of earned media coverage, whether it's that generative AI using news sites to provide its answers to users, whether it's sort of do follow links from those high authority domains, whether it's Google picking up its search results in SERP from those online news publications. I think there are so many use cases that mean that media is such an underrated way of driving conversation and reputation at the moment.
Yeah.
And finally, I guess it's almost back to that context piece, isn't it? Are the authors recognized? And I don't know, Corey, if before I say anything, if you've got anything to add on that point.
No, not that much. It's basically you need to be the expert as a company, but within a company as a line of business, within a line of business as a proprietor, you need to build expertise. And I think we have a question on which we can go for. It's one from Lucas talking about how to have brand voice, knowledge, SEO, etc. I'm going to answer that, of course, but it's related to that. It's basically how can I mix those things that can be sometimes quite different and sometimes that are against each other because some constraints can be okay. I can't talk about it, but my audience is looking for it. So yet you need the number one thing is creating value for your audience. If you don't have that, it's never going to work. We are not in 2015 anymore. BERT on Google side is existing now. And so basically, yeah, we need to create value. Before we go to, yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to say, should we go to questions or whatever's next?
Yes, of course. So thanks for listening, guys. Two studies here. One related to AI. So that's SEMG study. So it's basically how AI is being used by marketing people. 500 people interviewed. So it's quite interesting. It's practical. It's hands-on. And on inclusive side, it's the banking report that Jack mentioned before. Also, if you are in the bank industry, for sure, it's going to be of interest for you. So guys, don't know that. That's free, of course. So go for it. Q&A then. Okay, so if you have any question, again, please ask. We will add those questions in the Q&A section. I'm going to answer the Lucas question in here. So how can we ensure that brand voice, knowledge, and SEO are balanced? For example, is there a risk that brand voice could negatively impact SEO or vice versa? I'm sorry, because that's a yes and no, it depends kind of answer. So let me answer that in plain words. So basically, yes, there is a risk. If your brand voice put too many constraints on SEO recommendation. So you need to find the right mix, and I will build that as different, like as a building, basically. You start at the bottom. Okay, that's SEO recommendation. Okay. So, okay, if your audience is looking, I don't know, Lucas, on what company you work, what kind of company, what industry, but let's say you are an insurance company and you want to create something on what is term life insurance. You need to talk about a few things. You need to talk about, a few topics. You need to answer a few questions. You need to have that. It's not depending on you. We don't care who you are at that point. It's what your audience is looking for that matters. That's number one thing. So you create your outline. So that's the ideal world. You're perfect from an SEO standpoint. Then you will add 2 layers, brand voice and knowledge. Brand voice is basically what you can and cannot do and how you will do it. So let's say you do not sell term life insurance for whatever reason. It's not a product that you have. So maybe you will explain the difference between term life insurance and all life insurance, because you sell all life insurance. So you talk about term life insurance, but in a way that you talk about also all life insurance, and within the paragraph, you will say all life insurance is way better than term life insurance. Why? Because you're the expert, and that's the knowledge. You have product pages, you have explanation, you have pricing, you have all the knowledge that you need, and that I do not have, honestly, to say, okay, all life is better for this and that. So that's the way I would do things. And technically speaking, at SEMG, that's how we work. It's basically, okay, you want to produce an AI content, a fully AI generated content. We will use basically what your audience is looking for, then who you are and what's the knowledge, what sources we will use. It can be your website, it can be your knowledge base, so you can build a knowledge base saying, okay, I want to retrieve information from the government, from Wikipedia, from, like, I don't know, trusted sources, or all of the web. But if it's all of the web, maybe we're going to retrieve information from reddit.com, and maybe you don't want that to happen. So maybe you can deselect that all of the web part to only use that knowledge. And sometimes it's a bit of negotiation. And it's also something that is very organization related. You need your communication department to understand, your brand department to understand that there are something that we need to do. And sometimes, it's a bit of negotiation. Maybe if you talk about life insurance, you can't use the word death. It's not possible. Editorial guideline, don't use the word death, or don't use the word, I don't know, whatever. So you will not use it, but you're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be better than your competitors. That's something that also you need to have in mind all the time. It's not a battle to be perfect. It's not a battle to be at 100 out of 100. We have a content score on SEMG to guide you. We don't care about being at 100. We care about being better than your competitors, and often that means being above 75 out of 100. So no perfection, only better than the competition, negotiation with the brands, and build layers, basically. Jack, anything that you want to add? Maybe
no, I guess
on social part, because I think that's also manageable from a social standpoint.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking actually, Corey, is that Probably less from a practical sense, but more from a sort of how you approach it. Is, your audience isn't one audience or one person who's the same, even if you break it into persona, or for example, men over 60 on this income. That's a very, very broad group who expect to hear different things, where different things matter to them. They hang out in different places. Their route to finding you and you finding them is very different. So I guess there's sort of less of a conflict in that regard. And that's really where something like social listening comes in, to understand, where is it acceptable to say this thing, or needed to say this thing? Where is it less relevant? Where do we need to prioritize? Where can we use other strategies? So I think it's certainly something, obviously the question is far more, search engine oriented. But, we've spoken today about a whole multi-channel approach. And that's not just in terms of doing stuff, but also in the research and planning stages as well.
Yeah, and I think it's useful because you can use something that's been done for search engine to decompose it into different social posts, etc. One thing, if I may add in here, is sometimes you will have constraints and you don't have the power to fight it, basically, because the head of communication of the VP of marketing said, no way, you won't do that. So sometimes there is something that you can't do, for example, on a landing page. On a landing page, so many constraints, so many things that you cannot do. Yet maybe on the same topic with the same audience, you can create a guide or an article or a tool like a simulator or a calculator, whatever, to bring traffic on the same topic, and on which you can do whatever you want because you have no constraints, or way less constraint, because it's not a landing page. So it's not the same validation workflow. And you will build traffic, build legitimacy on that topic using those other type of content that will be pushed through your funnel to that landing page to convert. But the entry point is not the same because you need to respect certain constraints. Often that's what we see within big corporations, such as big banks, big insurance company. On sometime landing page, you can't do whatever you want because you have legal saying nope, not gonna happen. Okay, guys, you've been shy. So no other question. You can go for it. We have, I think, 1 minute left. So if you have a specific question, a specific use case that you want us to tackle, it's free. And Jack and I were not cheap, so use it. Otherwise, we're going to finish here. I think it's been a great session. Thanks for that. And I'm going to finish. Yeah, here are the studies. If you want to contact us, you can send us a message on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way. So Jack Richards, Corentin Mirande, the French way, or Samji or Inclusive. Easy to find us. It was a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks, Lucas, for the comments. Thanks, Jack, for sharing the stage with me today. It's been a pleasure, and see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya. Bye.